It is great to be back with all of you. I've missed you. I thought, Jim, I think we were going to sing like "Welcome Back, Cotter." Welcome back, your dreams were yours. Yeah, it's and the comment. You're from Montana, Jim. You're Montana for school. The cowboys and the rodeo are a big deal out there. And as you were saying, kind of got twisted up because I was actually the rodeo doctor, and I was on the radio. I was the radio doctor, and I was a member of the Rotary Club. So I was Rotary Radio. You got all of them. And rodeo, like politics, no timeouts, no guarantees, no mercy. And there was a guy from The Economist who came to visit with me and wanted to talk with me. He says, "Senator, I've read on Wikipedia you're a rodeo doctor. What exactly does a rodeo doctor do?" And I said, "Well, you should come to a rodeo." So he came to Cody, Wyoming, 4th of July, had a chance to meet Al Simpson, who, you know Al, he had a few Al had more choice quotes than I did. Took him to the rodeo, and he had a chance to meet people who are independent, resilient, self-reliant, Republicans, obviously, all the rodeo guys. And they're fat. I mean, they're very young. They go and they're looking for points and prize money and pretty girls, and they end up getting bumps and bruises and broken bones, and that's why you call the rodeo doctor. Rodeo's been very, very good to me as an orthopedic surgeon. So the guy writes the article for The Economist, and he talks about Senator Dr. John Barrasso, and he talked about this guy who was a bull rider and got kicked off the bull, thrown off the bull. And he said, and there's Senator Dr. John Barrasso in the dung-scented arena. I didn't know if he meant the Senate or if he meant the rodeo in Cody. You never know with some of these things. But let's see, since we were last year, we've had, not much, presidential election. We've had 2 elections on January 5th in Georgia. We had an insurrection here on the 6th. We have a new president sworn in. We had a second impeachment trial. And about 50 executive orders. Other than that, not much has happened since we last got together. I'm happy to talk about anything and answer questions, Bev, that you have, or Jim, that you have, or others. Most of us were home over the Memorial Day time, traveling the states. What I heard about was inflation. Prices are up. It costs about $15 more to fill your gas tank now than when Biden took over. And, on the day number 1 in office, he killed the Keystone XL pipeline. Clearly, his fingerprints are on the murder weapon. The other thing I hear about from small business owners, and you see help wanted signs everywhere, almost as commonplace as the Ripon Society sign here. I mean, everywhere you go, every business, help wanted because they can't find workers. And when the government pays people more to stay home than to work with all the incentives and the bonuses, what do you expect? These people aren't lazy. They're logical. They're doing what the incentives are out there for them to do. So you hear that a lot at home. So people are focused on the economy, focused on jobs. People at home in Wyoming are certainly talking about what's going on at the border. We're on a path for about 2 million illegal immigrants coming in, so that's clearly an area of concern. Handing over our energy dominance that President Trump brought us as a nation by killing Keystone and now approving the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And the president, I think, is going to meet with Putin tomorrow. That's a gift. When you export energy, you're exporting influence, and you're having a connection. And now what we're seeing is Putin with pipeline to Germany that they refuse to stop the construction of is going to just allow Europe to become more dependent upon Russia, and Putin has to be smiling. There's just no question about it. We can talk about lots of issues that are out there, what the president says he wants to do on infrastructure, but what he's going to do on taxes should be a concern to every American. To do the kind of spending that they're talking about, where the Democrats want $7 trillion in spending. Oh, we'll just tax a couple of rich guys. The math to Democrats tell stories, they don't do math. We know that if to get that kind of money, you're going to have to go after everybody in America. Everybody is going to be impacted with increased taxes under what Biden is proposing. We're going to do everything we can to stop it. There's a 50-50 Senate, which should be a mandate to move to the middle. Instead, they seem to be heading as far to the left as they can. And Jim and I were talking about this yesterday. The fact is that they've had the first get-together lunch of the Democrats after coronavirus. Of course, Republicans in the Senate, we met 3 times a week so we could eat every time we were there. We never missed a meal. We never missed a meeting. We were always there. And the Democrats finally have come back to get together in one room, the Democrat senators, after just doing conference calls and Zoom for months. One senator actually, this is true, brought a turkey sandwich, and they made him go out in the hall and eat it because they weren't going to have any food. That was the rule. They all sit with masks. I mean, it's a tale of two cities, the way that the Democrats have dealt with coronavirus and the way the Republicans have. So they had this meeting, and there was a discussion going on. One of the Democrat senators told me, and one group said, look, we could do all this spending and taxes. We're going to lose the House or the Senate or maybe both in 2 years. To which Bernie said, oh, we're going to lose them. We got to do everything now. This is our only chance. And that's where they are. They're going to try to go as far to the left as they can on everything. And we see it. This is the month that I think John Thune calls this Senator Schumer's Designed to Fail month. Because everything he's going to bring up is a hot button issue for them and against us, and we're going to stop all of it. We did with the paycheck protection, the so-called paycheck protection, which isn't really do that. They're going to have gun legislation going after the Second Amendment. There's a whole host of things they're going to bring up in June. And Schumer wants all of these to fail, so that he can then say, look what they're doing. They're stopping the president. We need to overturn the filibuster. We need to go back. We need to do this by simple majority, get rid of the filibuster. So all of this is intended to ramp up kind of animosity against Republicans, get the Democrats all in line. And they're not in line now. So that's where we are, and that's what's happening. I'm happy to answer questions on any of these topics. If not, I can go on and talk about a lot of things for a long time.
Great. Thank you, Senator.
I was just home in Montana, and obviously my family and all my friends there are Republican, but they do have a bit of a concern about building or rebuilding the Republican Party, because what they hear a lot of is sort of the concern about sort of differences of opinion on many things. What would you say to them about the future, 2022 and 2024 and beyond for the party?
I'm looking forward to a very successful 2022. Mitch McConnell's come under a lot of criticism for saying at one point he said he wanted to make sure that Barack Obama was a one-term president. I want to make Joe Biden a one-half-term president. And I want to do that by making sure they no longer have House, Senate, White House. Joe Biden will never veto a bill. He'll go down in history as this president who has never vetoed a bill, because he will sign whatever Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi put on his desk, period. He's not going to get anything he doesn't agree to sign. He's just along for the ride right now, and they're running the show, and the party is being driven further and further to the left. When you have a group, the party that is proposing defund the police, less security in our country, that's a story that writes itself. We are going to continue to work on things of growing the economy. The Democrats want to grow the government. I mean, that's really the fundamental difference. We get to freedom or government. Grow the economy, grow the government. American energy and energy dependence. Are we better off? I believe we are better off producing energy and selling it to our friends than not producing energy and having to buy it from our enemies. So all of these things I think we're going to continue to talk about. Now, different people have different approaches to get there. As Susan Collins likes to say, it's like buying a plane ticket on Wikipedia, not Wikipedia, where do you buy it on Travelocity, and you go through Clear. You know where you want to go, and you were told, well, what's the price, which airline, and all of those things, but you're all going to the same destination, even though you may be flexible on which route you take and what day you go, and if you go morning or night or the red eye to save money. We're all going to the same place, which is more freedom, constitutional beliefs, and not more government. And that's the fundamental. I mean, we believe in free markets, limited government, individual freedoms, national security, kind of the traditional values of America. And we see a different party on the other side of the aisle, which really is a party of socialism. It's freedom or socialism to me.
I wanted to ask you about if we were, let's pretend like the surface transportation reauthorization bill is what it used to be without all the extras in it. You've been thoughtful about pay-fors. What do you think the path forward is on that? I appreciate the Democratic rhetoric about raising corporate tax rates, but actually to funnel that money over to DOT and the Highway Trust Fund and these kinds of things is a little more difficult, and wanted to get your thoughts on that. Thank you, sir.
So she's from Target, but you're from Toyota, right? Yeah. So let me start. We're playing Let's Pretend. So I know when I go to Target in Casper, I wish that my buddy John, who's passed on, was still there behind the camera counter. That's actually when you had to buy camera and you didn't buy these things. You know, this time is different. Michael's still there at Target, so I see all my friends. And if you go to Foss Toyotas, you can see Jim, and then you can see Kyle Landon. So you know, you think this is like Montana, Wyoming politics. You know, any company you say, oh yeah, boom, 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 who do you know? Service transportation. I talked to Tom Carper last night. I don't know if anybody saw the picture in Politico of Tom Carper without a shirt. Yeah. I told him everybody saw it. He said, oh, I don't think so. I said, I think everybody saw it. And we were talking about pay for it because the bipartisan bill just came out, surface transportation, Shelley Moore Capito, Tom Carper, $300 billion. Not enough money in the Highway Trust Fund to do that. The question is, how do you pay for all of it? You know, if you index the gas tax, doesn't bring much now, but long term, had the index the gas tax in 1990 something, we wouldn't have an issue now. We're at the same point with electric vehicles, where you think that electric vehicles do the same amount of damage to the road, you know, the number of axles and then the weight of the car. It doesn't matter what's powering it. And you need to make sure that if they really are going to get to a point where, I mean, what are the predictions? By 2040, 30% of all vehicles on the road will be electric vehicles. They're going to have to, at some point, contribute to the maintenance of the roads. So, you know, how do you make sure that those new vehicles coming online are contributing as well? Because raising the gas tax doesn't do it, because they aren't buying gas, and more of the vehicles coming on are going to be electric. So we talked about those models to it. So there's things that we can do effectively. There's a lot of money out there that, as Roy Blunt, who's on the Appropriations Committee and follows this pretty clear, is orphan money from the first 5 bipartisan coronavirus relief bills that are pretty specific in how it has to be spent, and it's never going to be. So we ought to repurpose that. There's a lot of money into the more recent Joe Biden coronavirus, unneeded or unrelated to coronavirus, basically payoff to bail out big cities, that isn't even going to go out for another couple of years, that we ought to be repurposing. So there's a lot of money there. There's some agreement, but the action of the Democrats of the far left is a lot of taxes, massive spending on things that are not, as you described, surface transportation. They're not roads, bridges, ports, airports. They're not broadband, none of those things. You know, different fact checkers said, it fact checks as true that less than 6% of the money in the Biden infrastructure bill was for actually roads or bridges. But if you then add ports, airports, all of that stuff, it's still less than 30% of the money. They did have more money for subsidies for electric vehicles than they did for all those other things that we would consider traditional infrastructure. And then, you know, $400 billion for senior care. Now it's a legitimate discussion to have of, should we be spending money on senior care? Should we have free college tuition? Should we have free daycare for everybody? I mean, I don't think we should have any of those things. That's not the role of the government. I mean, communities do that, families do that, people do that. So, you know, that's a discussion that you could have by having hearings and, you know, going through the legislative process as we think it ought to work, and not just say, oh, okay, we'll call it infrastructure and spend trillions of dollars when people really can't figure out how much money that is. Those are big numbers. I mean, Jim Councilman even has a trillion.
Generally, I wanted to ask your feeling of your colleagues in the caucus about climate change, just the politics of it, the science, what you and your colleagues are thinking along the way. And second, more specifically, whether we do anything this year or next year on climate, our friends in the European Union and Canada are looking to border adjust their prices on carbon. I just wanted to see if that's an issue that you and your colleagues have been looking at and thinking about. You know, I know some of your colleagues in the House have talked to the administration about it. It's an issue that that's coming, we know of, and will be an issue that we have to deal with in terms of trade.
Climate change is real. I believe in it. Climate change, mankind is contributing to it. I mean, if you put carbon dioxide from a scientific standpoint, if you put carbon dioxide in a closed sphere and see what happens, well, the temperature goes up. We get all of that. The policies of this administration seem to be driven by climate alarmists who want to do things dramatically, unilaterally, and immediately. They would shut down the United States tomorrow. And you talk about Europe, I'm going to talk about China and India. You could shut Europe down tomorrow and the United States down to get to zero emissions from both Europe and China. I'm sorry, Europe and the United States. And global emissions are going to continue to go up and up and up and up. Period. Because of what China and India are doing. China's Belt and Road Initiative, half of the money is going to build coal-fired power plants in other countries who are not using the kind of coal that we have in Wyoming, which is clean coal. And if you want low sulfur coal, then the best coal you're going to get in the world is in Wyoming. So Bill Gates has a new book that's out. Bill was in a program with me last week in Wyoming where we introduced this new next generation advanced nuclear power. Liberals don't like nuclear power, but yet it is the only zero carbon source of energy. 20% of electricity in the United States comes from nuclear power right now. That has to solve it. You cannot build enough wind turbines and solar panels to power this country or this economy with the energy you need. People, I say, Republicans do math and Democrats tell stories. Oh, let's put up one windmill and we'll power the country. It's not going to happen. The math doesn't work. Oh, we'll plant some trees. So Bill Gates has a book out talking about how many trees you'd have to plant just to take care of the carbon, to absorb the carbon that the United States makes. About half the surface area of the Earth to absorb that. So the thing you need to do about carbon is find ways to capture carbon, sequester it. In Wyoming, the School of Energy Resources, University of Wyoming, has set up, it can capture flue gas. They did a big X Prize, $20 million, the global X Prize. The finalists did the research at the University of Wyoming. Researchers from UCLA won, and they can capture carbon and they can make concrete. One of the biggest sources, if you read the Economist article on carbon 2 weeks ago, the 4 biggest sources of carbon that you can't really, the hardest to remove. Okay, concrete, steel, shipping, and air transportation. How do you do that? Hard to have electric airplanes. Electric cars, electric airplanes to go overseas. You can't, it's not there. Those are the hardest areas to go. So the next step is how do you capture carbon and sequester it, in addition to trying to make energy as clean as we can, as fast as we can, in ways that don't hurt consumers. Everything I've seen so far raises the cost for consumers, and they hate that. And they say, well, why do we do this? Why are we going to sacrifice today when China and India are not? And Bill Gates, if he were here, he would say, we need to do all the things to do to reduce carbon, but realistically, if you don't come up with some source of energy, which is so cheap and carbon-free, that China uses it and India uses it, all this other stuff may be feel-good stuff, and I listened to Biden go on, and he killed the Keystone XL pipeline and 1,000 jobs immediately and 10,000 overall. I'm going to be on television talking about it today. Doesn't solve the problem. And that's the difference between the science and the math and the storytellers, who have it more as a religion than I think it's a problem that needs to be solved, but it's not a reason to panic. And it's a challenge, but it's not something which is so problematic that it's worth hurting our economy and making us even more dependent on China and India, and at a time when you have, this came up in a hearing the other day. So where do the solar panels come from? China. Who are they making them? Who's making them? The Uyghurs, the people that are being held. All right. And the lithium for the batteries, and the wind turbines that are being made there. And where does the cobalt come from? Congo. And why is it cheap there? Child labor. So how do you balance that, Mr. President? Not you, but Joe Biden. How are you going to balance that? Then I asked that to his nominees for the Department of Energy. And they, these are big challenges we have to handle. And they're right. So that's telling the story of how we're doing all these things. This can't be collateral damage. This is real. These are human rights issues that we can't allow feel good to deal with. We got to focus on getting sure that we can get to protecting the planet long term without hurting ourselves and our economy today.